Hi, Aries Ascendant. Welcome to this space. Aries Ascendant, Libra Descendant. Interesting. Okay, so I was inspired to make these videos. If you haven't seen any of the other ones, I'm going to give you a little introduction here. So we're going to be looking at, again, the Ascendant and your Descendant. We're using my pizza pie chart here that I'll be reading from. A little bit about how I'm going to be viewing this. The foundation of it is where we're working off the traditional ancient astrology where Taurus rules the first house, okay, making you the 12th house. I would presume anyone here watching this has seen the Aries ancestral reading. Just a minute. Thank you. Showing the Aries, again, if Taurus, right, we'll look at this. If Taurus is now ruling the first house, then Aries is the 12th, right? We go, so Gemini would be the second, Cancer third, Leo fourth, etc. And it's interesting if we think about moving from, like, you're taking a step back, right? That's usually where you would be. And I know that that's uncomfortable. Whoever's here that has Aries, right? You know that. It's a little uncomfortable to have to step back, right? To not charge forward, right? Conquer. And with Aries being your ascendant Aries now in the first house, traditionally, again, originally being 12th, and the way I'm viewing it now, that's how we're going to be looking at it, is the point. I'm also going to be, of course, using my creative means of reading this pizza pie chart. So, lastly, before we begin, what's interesting too is I started with Taurus and I just spun the chart like this until whatever the ascendant was, and that's how I picked. Well, guess what? Taurus is the first and you ended up being the last, which gives me another, to me, is a little indication that we're on the right path here, right? Now, Aries Ascendant. I see most of you probably run a little hot. You know what I mean? Like, is that a bat? Interesting. I'd say I feel like most of you have like square shoulders, male or female. Like it's very much, there's like a triangle here from your shoulders to the top of your head. And I guess it's important in ways of the self for you to appreciate that head on your shoulders, right? Appreciate your being able to have eyes and to see, right? Having a brain that functions, like basic things about yourself. Maybe some of you would judge yourself upon what you can see in your mirror. This part of you is very important, right? So I feel like you're always fighting for first place here too. You could want to do that. You could be very competitive. But you got to remember, the only way that Aries can go from the 12th into the 1st is if the warrior in the 12th house surrenders their sword to Libra in the 6th. Right? And it's not throwing the sword at their head, but like realizing that some battles can't be won, or some war isn't worth fighting, right? And that things have timelines, and I mean, is life a struggle? Yeah, you probably know that. But that doesn't mean you're supposed to push through it. Because there could be a tendency here too where you think like, oh, I already know everything. And I actually just did, you and Virgo are today. There could be a little bit of that, because I do see that you are probably quite smart. I mean, it depends on your Mercury and things like that, but I would say that I heard you're as smart as your mother. And you're probably more like your mother. The way your brain functions is probably very similar to your mother, which is helpful and also mildly hindering. So you have to also know, a big lesson here is for you, the self, Aries Ascendant, Libra Descendant, is for you to know how to slow down enough to see what is in front of you, right? How to observe slowly with your eyes, then put that into your brain, process it in your head, and then you say something. You make a move, right? It's like your life is like a chess game, and you have to, it's not speed chess, because you're not a chess master yet. You could be, if you wanted to be. But remember, you're coming out of the unknown into the forefront. And so I guess there will be a lot of test to what you have. And this goes back to other lives, like, which you probably don't remember, right? You still probably dream about them, though. I bet you dream about other lives. It depends where your moon is, too. But I would say most of you may dream about other lives. You could have, like, nightmares. If you are having nightmares, I see that you're not digesting something in ways of emotions, that it needs to be processed. And it was like I was telling Virgo earlier, you can't just process it in your head. Okay? Say one thing, but feel another thing. It's very good for you. You have to be honest here, very much so. Okay? Even if that's uncomfortable sometimes. Because you may fight your feelings. You may fight, it may be a little bit of a struggle for you to be gentle on yourself. Okay? Even like negative self-talk could be a habit until you finally figure out more about your mother. Okay, and how she affects your mind, how she affected your thinking process, your processes. Okay, how those work. And again, whether they're yours or if they're somebody else's, and this could be anyone because I think what happens is whatever people say to you, you remember emotionally. But you don't like being in the emotional place because you're square to your own feelings. You to your own feelings are naturally challenged. So you have to be more open to other means of explanation that are not just in your head. And just other means of explanation overall. Right? Like even the concept of what we're talking about here. Everybody and their mama, from Vedic to even a lot of the ancient astrologers, tropical, whatever, it's Aries in the first house. But technically it's not. And who says? You know what I mean? And so and not being like, oh my God, that one's wrong. See, you fucking lied to me. La, 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 la. No, it's like, okay, well, what feels good to me? What feels right? And how you feel it out is by, again, observing what's happening with these eyes, with your internal eye, right? And then process it. Not only with your head, but also with your heart. I see, again, it's very important for you to not I feel like you could say, like, this is kind of a position where you could say to someone, like, hey, or like, hey, how's it going? And then when they turn, somebody else got this too, it's weird, I can't remember. Like, you smile at somebody, and then when they turn around, I think it was Gemini, and you turn around, and, you scowl at them or whatever, or be like, fuck you, you want to make sure that you're not doing that to anybody else, and also that you're being, again, I see, gentle with what you say, because remember, whatever anybody says, including yourself, whatever you say, you're like, oh, I feel like this would be somebody that and again, this is not throughout life, it's like until you figure it out, where you would say to yourself, like, oh, I'm so dumb, like, oh, what a dummy, I'm such a dummy, or like, I'm fat, or like, I can't do that, or it's negative self-talk. Pick yourself apart too much. So remember, you got to be gentle on you. And I see that the more that you are gentle on you, the more you learn. It's like one of your biggest lessons is to be gentle on yourself, particularly in the way that you communicate who you are and what you desire in your life. Okay? Let's see here. Let's look at your siblings. I feel like you have a younger sibling. Or maybe you're the youngest. I can't figure it out. You definitely pick up information very fast. Okay? Very fast. You're like zoop, zoop, zoop. You're like a magnet. You probably love to learn. You love to learn. Because of all that mental activity, though, that learning, you want to make sure that, again, that you're learning about this emotional space, because if not, it's where a person would, when they have a little downtime, like they read, or they go on the internet and they study, or they do this and they do that, but they don't take that quiet time to just be in their body. You need to learn how to do that so that you are calmer, because some of you could be anxious sort of people until you find more faith in God. And I actually see most of you do probably believe in God. You understand the power of nature, right? You understand the power of the Creator. You could fight it a little bit for a while, but then it's like something happens and all of a sudden it's like, what do they call that? Like the immaculate conception of you becoming faithful. It's like, whoa. You could want to like study what's it called? A theologist, where you study God, you study different ancient texts, like in a religious sense. That would be interesting to you to like learn about that. It would be good for you also to learn about that. Maybe you can connect to, maybe you can emotionally, it goes back to reading too. Some of you may be able, if you can't tap into those emotional spaces that you want to, I feel like you should find books. Could even be film at this point, but I see that books, particularly, the word is so important. The word, right? Yes. The word is what, it's like you read like the story, and while you're reading the story, you get to use your imagination and become part of the story so that you can tap into some emotion that may be hard for you to tap in with other people. Okay? I think for most of you, your mom was around. She may have been the dad, or maybe you grew up with a single mom. You definitely had other siblings. Your mother also had probably many, I feel like had many siblings. Like there's a bigger family. Um, your mother could have been a little emotionally reserved also. Like, it's not that she doesn't care about you, but I think, again, like, the emotional receptivity from you to your emotions, you to your mother, you to probably even your moon. It depends, again, where it is in your chart, but it's like, it's a little bit hard to get what you want out of that space. You really gotta, it's sort of like clay, like you have to work it for a while, right? And something needs to get warm and to be able to be malleable. It really needs to be physically, like, there needs to be a lot of work and effort put into something to feel the way that you want to feel. I see for most of you, home is very important. You should definitely, you probably like to collect things. Some of you could be a little bit weary about having children, or if you do have children, you could be sort of a worrywart about your kids. You may not trust like your community, but you probably should if that is the case. This is also a way for you to open your heart, is for you to be more involved with certain kinds of communities, like especially in ways of a job. It could be something that's like helpful for you to be involved with, something that affects a lot of people, right? And to be a part of that, and to not be, because I would sense you probably like to be, I feel like it's uncomfortable, but then I feel like you like it in the same breath. Let's see here. You know how someone says like, oh, it's a pain in my back, like a pain in my neck, or like a pain in my ass. Oh, you're a pain in my ass. If someone's a pain in your ass, and it's more fighting than loving, that goes back to your own emotional space and how well you're doing at work. Okay. But I see that, I guess you got to ask yourself, like, how are you a pain in the ass? you know, or is it something where you're not communicating what it is that you need when you need it? I see you can't solve problems with sex here, but you may try to. Like, it'd be one of those situations where, like, the relationships, because you could have, like, an on and off relationship with someone that's, like, it's good one day, it's bad the next day. It's good one week, it's bad the next week. But it's kind of, like, really dips deep on either side, and then it's almost like a fucking fight, like you'll have sex to try to solve the problem, and then it will smooth it over for a little bit, and then you do it again. The reason why it goes back to that same space, and if this is happening, is because something's imbalanced here, and you're not going about solving the problem the right way. You have to make sure that you could definitely deal, like, because you have a natural tendency here to fight your unconscious feelings, okay? And subconsciously, the subconscious space in you, Aries Ascendant, Libra Descendant, is huge. It's really, really, really big. And you may have sex with a lot of people too. But I see that it's important who you have sex with, because you could end up having a child with someone that you and be a single parent. And maybe not have the community that you need, or maybe, again, that's part of the reason you don't, or aren't happy with your children in some kind of way, or this could have been your mother to you, but there's something about, again, not repeating the situation because you know what the lessons are. Let's see here. What would you do for a job? I mean, it depends again on the planets, like the heavenly bodies that are in there, but I would say generally, some of you could be like a fitness coach, or like a coach for a sports team, something where you use like your knees and your thighs. It's like your, like soccer, football, baseball. Again, I see someone in a gym, things like this. It could also be where you could be in the medical field. For some of you, very much, that would be something very beneficial to you, where something to do with people's bodies particularly. And I don't know what it would be called, where if you'd be a person that's like, something dealing with people with like arthritic issues, or maybe or working with the elderly. Could be actually working with the elderly would be probably something. People that are older than you would be very good for you. Something that comes natural to you. You probably are on your feet most of the time. I see that it's important that you have a very organized workspace. It should be minimal. It's interesting. Virgo had similar energy. It should be minimal. And you definitely want to make sure that if you are sitting for some reason, like your knees are, say, because, okay, for some of you, you would be on your feet, but for others of you, it would be, your feet are on the ground, but your knees are bent, right? Your elbows are bent. You're like on I heard a typewriter. I actually saw a typewriter too, but, something like that. You want to make sure that you have a ergonomical chair, right? That you're not doing, you're in the right position for your body, or you could actually become arthritic through the work that you do. If you do anything where, again, you're like, maybe there's a lot of sitting down, standing up, standing up, getting down. If that's the case, then you want to make sure that you're stretching a lot, that you are having a good calcium intake, right? That you are paying attention to your joints. And because this has a lot to do with like Saturn, you want to make sure that probably shouldn't work on Saturdays, okay? Technically, like you could work at home, you could volunteer maybe on Saturdays, but there's something about keeping the Sabbath holy here in relation to your job. Like whenever you get a job, I feel like you should let them know, like, hey, I don't work on this day. And you can say it's because of religious reasons. It doesn't have to be anything technical. It's your religious reasoning. No one can argue with that. There's a reason this is we make it a man-made law, but technically it is a God's law, right? So be comfortable with that and expressing who it is that you are. I do see you getting up, sitting down. There's something like that. You're moving around a lot. So we'll just make sure that you keep your body strong, and you are taking care of yourself, not only financially, physically, emotionally, mentally, right? You really got to touch on all these, or your job is directly affected. Your position in the world is directly reflected into that space back to you. And you need to take care of this, or I see your work will suffer. Okay? I do see that you probably have whatever you do for work is also something, how you put your face into the world is something that is very unique. You probably would have a job. If you have a job, you would have a job for a long time. And this is sort of why I saw the medical field. It's like you'd have to go to school for a certain amount of time, right? And then once you're in it, you would stay in it for like 10, 15. You could hold the job for like 15 years if you wanted to. But I do see for most of you, it's something that you have to actually move around. You have to be moving your body in some kind of way, walking from here to there, right? Bending down, getting something, reaching up. It's like you need to be fluid in some kind of way so that you don't become stiff and bored with your job. Does that make sense? I see that you probably, the friends that you do have and the communities that you do have will probably be spiritually based. You may be a little bit confused about what communities you belong to and like what groups of friends actually really vibe with you. It may take a while, like of trial and error to what makes sense again to you, but I see eventually you'll settle into something that's really strong. And for most of you, again, I see spiritual groups. Like you could go to a moon cycle group, you know, you could go to like a drum circle, you can go to a sweat lodge, whatever, you go to the coffee shop and play chess with the old man. It doesn't have to be anything technically spiritual. It's just like you're connecting in this space, in this way, learning deeper lessons about what friendship all means. You have big lessons with what friendship means, okay? And I see that friends sometimes can be your weakness. You probably have more fun with Leos and Virgos, but I see again there's some trial and error in there, okay? You'll be able to tell the health of your unconscious, which is a cool thing to be able to tell in a physical way, by your feet. Or if you're having any issues with like your lymph nodes, things like that, the lymphatic system, or again, I see the health of your feet will show you what's going on unconsciously, what you're still battling, or how that battle is going, or if again you have surrendered the sword to Libra in the 6th, right? If you gain the wisdom to be able to give the sword, right? Without any remorse or forcefulness or whatever, right? It's of your own choosing. You use this wisdom. I also see you soaking your feet. It would be very helpful. Taking baths also, like being fully submerged if you can in water. I see specifically hot, like warm water for some of you. If you live near like a hot spring, this would be very beneficial. Maybe for you, and again, it depends on the other heavenly bodies, but like you may not need to be in hot water as long as other people. Like you could take a bath, or again, be in a hot spring for like 5-10 minutes, and that's enough, where someone else could sit there for an hour. So you got to know your own, right? Because I said originally, like you run hot, right? So and this would depend where your Mars is too, but Mars rules your first house. So I'd also say, again, I saw again a square pair of shoulders, but you could be kind of a stocky person, you know, like there's something about you that when you're walking through life, people are like, dang, that's a strong person, you know, and maybe that's something that you feel like you have to live up to. And with Aries, I know, again, it's being emotional doesn't seem tough, right? It's like, it seems weak because you're like fire, water, what? But if you combine fire and water, what do we have? We have the Temperance, right? And that's magic. That's alchemical magic, where you turn this really hard thing, this lead, this poisonous thing, into gold, right? Which is the heart, right? So again, you can't just be in your head about things or trying to, I heard, live up to anything externally to the world. It's about living up to the place that you can attain, that can be attained in your heart and in your feelings, right? Because when you say that you're if you say that you're happy when you're not, then it's like instant power struggles with people. If you're having power struggles with people, you're having a hard time with money, again, you're doing that fight and fuck kind of, you know, trying to fix things with sex, or like being, because when you say one thing and you mean another thing, that's manipulation, especially if you're aware of it. And I know that starting with your head, you know what's right and what's not. And remember, I see how did your mother do things like that? Because again, you could just have a pattern inside of you that you have to unlearn something so that you can become your own person and find your own emotional peace. Okay? Okay. Wow. These are so fun. I can't believe you're the last and Taurus was the first. It's fascinating to me. So fascinating. All right, well, I hope that was of service, of course. I hope you learned something new about yourself, or it helped you learn about somebody else or your children or what have you. Okay? Take care of yourself. Peace.